Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new on my channel, then welcome. Today's video is the first episode of the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe Vault Collection series that I will be doing on my channel. The series is basically going to be me talking about each and every one of those palettes, sharing my thoughts on them, and also doing tutorials with every one of those palettes. Since this is the first video of the whole series, it will be a bit longer. I am going to go a bit more in depth in this one because I will be touching base on the collection as a whole. I will talk about the drama and the controversy that is surrounding this whole collection, and then I will be talking about the details of the specific palette that I will be testing out today before I get to the tutorial bit. I will also be doing swatches and dupe swatches, comparing it to the original Jaclyn Hill palette. So if you're not interested in anything but the tutorial, then I will leave a timestamp in the description box and you can just skip the whole thing that is coming right now. The Jaclyn Hill and Morphe Vault Collection is basically a collection of eyeshadows that did not make it to the original Jaclyn Hill palette. This one. The shadows that were left out from the original palette got collected and grouped together into 4 different color themes. So there are 4 eyeshadow palettes, each representing a different color theme. The initial launch date for the collection was supposed to be the 26th of June this year. However, there were some issues with the quality of the shadows. They weren't blending very well, they were patchy, and they were just very, very difficult to work with. So all the palettes that were pre-sold were recalled and the launch itself was postponed. Now, when they recalled the palettes and they postponed the launch, some people say that they simply repressed the shadows and that's it, and others say that they also reformulated them, but no one really seems to know for sure. But what did happen was that Morphe got so much support on social media. People were really positively surprised and they were very impressed with the way that Morphe handled the situation as a brand. But now that the palettes are actually launched and the collection is out there, there seem to be quite a lot of inconsistencies still in the formula of the shadows. Some palettes work just fine, they blend out like a dream and there are no issues, whilst others still have the same exact problems that apparently people had before the launch was postponed. Some of the shadows are not blending very well, they are patchy, they stick and kind of grab in weird places. They are just all in all very difficult to work with. So the whole situation is just really confusing. Now, ever since those inconsistencies started arising and all these very mixed reviews came out, people have come up with several theories. One of the theories is that Morphe did not actually get rid of the faulty eyeshadow palettes, that it was all just one huge PR trick, and that they are now selling the repressed or reformulated palettes alongside the faulty ones just to get rid of the stock that they have. It's pretty much just down to luck which one you'll get. You either get a good one or a bad one. Another theory that I've seen is that when you buy your palette or your collection from Ulta, that you will get the bad batch, and when you order the palettes or the collection from Morphe directly, then you will get the repressed or the sort of new palettes. I really do not think that it's true, because I have seen people say that they bought their palettes from Ulta and that everything worked fine for them, and on the other hand, I've seen people who have ordered their palettes from Morphe directly and they still have issues with their palettes. So I don't think that theory is very realistic. And lastly, as much as I've read, at least, some people seem to think that even though the old palettes were like gotten rid of and they released new palettes, that there are still some kind of issues with the production of the palettes. So that is why there are still some inconsistencies even with the new batch. So in general, the whole situation with these palettes is just really foggy. No one really seems to know what's going on and why there are so many inconsistencies. Allegedly, these palettes were supposed to perform just as well as the original Jaclyn Hill palette, and so far, having seen several reviews, that doesn't seem to be the case. Just as a reference point, I ordered my collection from Morphe.eu, so I ordered from them directly. Yeah, I am still not 100% sure whether mine is faulty or not, but you will see from the tutorial bit anyway, and you will see from the swatches. Let's just say that there were a few red flags, but I'm still not 100% sure whether mine is the good batch or the bad batch. Anyway, that is it for the collection as a whole. All the drama, all the theories, I think it's pretty much covered. So it's time to get into more detail about the specific palette that I'll be working with today. Just to put it out there quickly, I love the way that this whole collection looks like. I think that they did an amazing job with the packaging. It looks really, really sleek and clean and beautiful, and it does have a similar tone to the original one. So the first palette that I'll be playing with is Ring the Alarm. I'm not going to get into the whole drama surrounding the design of this palette and the whole collection. If you're interested in that, just Google BECCA and Morphe lawsuit, and I'm sure that you will find everything that you're looking for. As I already said, I love the packaging. It looks very simple and minimalistic, and I love it. I'm also really happy that they decided to make this one like a glossy cardboard rather than the first, like the original Jaclyn Hill one, which just it's kind of matte and it gets stained really easily. This is what the palette looks like from the outside. You get the name on the side of the palette that says Ring the Alarm, and then Morphe and Jaclyn Hill. The palette also comes with a mirror, which I think is a huge advantage, and it just makes everything much more convenient. And also the names of the shadows are now on the actual palette itself, which is really, really convenient for us, you know, video people who do tutorials, and it's just so much easier to actually see what kind of shadows we are using rather than having to find the names from some kind of separate sleeve. So I'm very, very grateful for that. Ring the Alarm is the red themed palette in the collection. So all of the shades in here are pink and orange and burgundy and red toned. The palette contains 10 eyeshadows. 4 of them are these metallic and foiled shadows. One of them has a satin finish, meaning that it is mostly matte, but it has some kind of shimmer through it. And then the rest of them, so the other 5 eyeshadows, are matte. The net weight of the palette is 16 grams or 0.56 ounces. That means that each eyeshadow pan contains 1.6 grams or 0.056 ounces of product. The palette retails for $15 US if you decide to get it separately, or if you decide to get the whole vault, then the collection is $49 US, which means that one palette comes down to about $12 US. That is it about the palette details. So now we get into the arm swatches and the dupe swatches. I know arm swatches have kind of a so-so reputation. Not everyone sees the point in them, but I wanted to add them in this video because I still think that swatches give you a good kind of indication on how the colors will end up looking on the skin, because sometimes they look one way in the pan and then when you apply them on the skin they end up looking like a totally different color. And also it is a good way to get a feel of the texture of the shadows. So yeah, I decided to include that part in the video, but again, if you are not interested in the swatches, you can jump straight to the tutorial. Okay, so we're moving on to swatches now, and the first shade in the first row is called Lolly. The second shade in the first row is called Rush. The third shade in the first row is On Camera. The fourth one is called Boom. Wow. And the final shade in the first row is Alert. The shimmery shades swatched really nicely, and the first matte one did as well, which was Rush, but the last one, which was Alert, it didn't really swatch all that well. It's quite patchy and not that much pigment came off, which I think is a bit funny. But now we're getting into the dupe swatches. So from the original Jaclyn Hill palette, the shade closest to Lolly, in my opinion, is Sissy. And Sissy looks like this. As you can see, they are similar shades in the sense that both are pinky shades with a lot of golden shimmers through them. But Sissy is way more cool toned pink, whilst Lolly is much more coral toned. The closest shade from the original Jaclyn Hill palette to Rush, in my opinion, is Butter. Butter is way more cool toned and Rush is way more warm toned, so they are not actually that similar at all. The closest shade to On Camera from the Jaclyn Hill palette is Queen. And even from the palette you could see that the shades are completely different. As you can see, On Camera is way more like true gold, yellowy gold, whilst the shade Queen is a lot more bronzy looking. The original Jaclyn Hill palette shade, there are little bits coming out because it's picking up a lot of product. I think it's a lot more crumbly and soft, and the Ring the Alarm is just a bit more tightly pressed. The closest shade to Boom that I could find was Firework, and those two are actually quite similar to each other. Firework is maybe just the tiniest bit more red toned. And finally, the closest dupe to the shade Alert is Roxanne. And as you can see, that one doesn't look anything like the shade Alert either. Alert is way more orange and way more warm toned again. So we're moving on to row number 2, and the first shade is called Bomb Ass. Oh wow. The second shade is called Siren. Okay, this one is not swatching all that well. It might also be from the fact that my arm is quite, not sticky, but it's not as soft as it was before cleaning up the first swatches. I swatched a bit wrong, so we'll just do the comparison swatches in a different way. So the next shade is Mugshot. The next shade is called Framed. Okay, this one is patchy as well. And the last shade is Siren. Okay, again, swatching kind of patchy and sticking to certain areas. They do not look the best, so I am slightly worried. The shimmers look fine, but the mattes I am particularly worried about. Now, as to the closest shade to Bomb Ass from the Jaclyn Hill palette, there really isn't any. No shade looks this bright, vibrant pink. The closest thing that I could find was Cran Apple, and just for the sake of it, I'm going to swatch it next to the shade Bomb Ass so you can see they really don't look anything alike, but this is just the closest shade that is in the palette. The second shade, Siren, is closest to Jax from the Jaclyn Hill palette. And yeah, okay. This is maybe sticking a bit as well, but it is definitely blending out way nicer. Again, they are not very similar at all. The shade Jax is a lot more purple tone, more like burgundy, whilst Siren just looks, I think it looks a bit more brown. Now, next again, there really isn't anything too similar to the shade Mugshot, but the closest thing that I could find was Pukey. Okay, this one isn't swatching that nice either, so it's giving me hope. But I mean, it's still a lot more even than this one. So these do look slightly similar, but the undertone is again different. The shade Mugshot is, I believe, again more warm, and the shade Pukey is just a bit more neutral. There's nothing resembling the shade Framed, which looks really, really like aubergine kind of purple, true deep purple, and there really isn't any kind of shade like that in the original Jaclyn Hill palette, so there's nothing to swatch next to it. But the last shade, Secret, it is probably closest to Mocha. And now again, putting them next to each other, they are not that similar at all. Mocha is again a bit more cool toned, whilst Secret is a bit more warm toned. So now we get to the tutorial part, and I'm going to be honest, after those swatches I am slightly worried. I have prepped my eyelids. I use the MAC Soft Ochre Paint Pot, and I set it down with the Bourjois Healthy Balance Unifying Powder in the shade Vanilla, and I think without further ado, let's just get on with it. Okay, and I'm going to try and blend it with the fluffy side of the brush. Okay, I'm gonna add a bit more. Okay, whoa. A lot of pigment came out now. Hopefully we will be able to blend this out. I guess it is blending a bit, not the easiest by any means, but this is not looking the best. It is looking a bit patchy, so let me try and add a bit more alert. When my eye is open, then it doesn't look that bad, but when I do this, it looks horrible. Okay, so I just took off everything that I just did. So when you're watching this, I already tried creating a look with the palette and it didn't really go down all that well. I'm going to try and do the same look, but just leave out one specific shadow that I really wasn't having a lot of fun with, and that is the shade Framed. It is the one that swatched really shitty as well, and I had a strong hunch that it was going to give me a lot of trouble, and I was right. So my fears are pretty much confirmed with this palette. I feel that I got the bad batch. Some shades work fine. For instance, the lighter shades that I just tried, Rush and Alert, these two worked just fine. I had no issues and they blended out beautifully. And also the shade Bomb Ass that I applied on my lid was really pigmented, so no issues there. But yeah, Framed is just does not want to apply the way that an eyeshadow should. So I'm going to try and create the same look that I had in my head, but I'm going to leave out the shade Framed because it just didn't go very well with the other shades, and also it didn't perform well at all. I have reapplied all the primers and stuff like that on my eyes, and I'm going to just go back using the shade Rush initially and then the shade Alert. I think I'm just going to do one eye first and then we'll see how it goes. At least these shades work fine. They are nicely pigmented, they blend out well. Now I'm going to use the shade Alert. This shade is really orange. I did not expect it to be that orange, but it really is. I am now going to apply the shade Bomb Ass all over my eyelid, and I'm going to try and maybe blend the edges in my crease as well. We'll see how that goes. Initially I cut the crease with some concealer, but I don't think I'm going to do that now. It doesn't seem to be that great of an idea. I mean, it's fine. I feel like I'm going to try and blend it in to the crease. I'm going to go back with the previous brush, the Zoeva 227, and I am slightly buffing the edges of the pink shimmery shadow. I feel like this one's fine as well. It applied beautifully on the lid before as well, but now that I've tried to kind of blend it out, it does seem to kind of diffuse beautifully into the crease, so I really don't have any complaints. And lastly, I'm going to take the shade Lolly and I'm going to put that on the center of my eyelid. Yeah, I kind of like the shift that it gave. I think it's quite cool. I'm going to apply a bit more of the shade Bomb Ass on either side. And I'm really focusing the shade near my lash line. And now I'm going to take a bit more of the shade Alert and I'm going to put that in the crease as well. And just very lightly going over the edges. I want to add a bit of the shade Secret near my lash line, so I'm going to take a very slim brush and I'm just going to start applying that near my lashes. And I'm not taking the shadow all the way to the inner corner, I'm taking it about 2/3 of the way in. I think this is where I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to do the other eye off camera, and I'm also going to finish up my makeup as much as I possibly can, and then I will come back and we will try and finish the lower lash line. Okay, so I finished up the rest of the face and I also applied some lashes. Initially, I did want to try as many shades from the palette as possible to really put it to the test, but because I do have to leave the house, I do have to go out, I do not want to mess up my makeup, so I'm just going to repeat the same things that I have on my top lid. I'm going to do the same thing on my lower lid and just keep it very simple, but I do promise that I will try and use these more kind of problematic shades in a separate tutorial using this palette once I have tested out all of the other palettes in the collection as well. As always, if you are interested in the details of what I am actually wearing on my face, then you can check the description box and all the product details will be listed there. I'm sure that you already noticed that, but I did highlight the brow bone and the inner corner using the same highlighter that I used on my face, which was the Milani Strobe Light powder, instant glow powder, something like that, because this palette does not have a highlighter shade. But I'm quickly going to wrap up this tutorial, so I'm going to first take the shade Rush and I'm going to run that on my lower lash line. I'm not even going to put the shade Alert on my lower lash line because it probably will not be very visible anyway, so I'm going to take the shade Bomb Ass and I'm going to run that on my whole lower lid, and then going back with the previous brush to just kind of run over that. Actually, let me take a bit more of the shade Rush because I feel like that is kind of lost. I'm taking a brown eyeliner from Wet n Wild. This is the Color Icon Kohl eyeliner in the shade Simma Brown now, and I'm going to run that in my waterline. Now I'm going to take the shade Secret and I'm going to run that pretty much in my lower lash line, very close to my waterline. Taking the previous brush that we used to lay down the shade Rush, I'm just buffing over. Taking a bit more of the shade Bomb Ass because it kind of got blended away. I'm just putting that under the brown and then going back in with the initial brush. And now I'm just going to finish up the look with a bit of MAC False Lashes Extreme Black Mascara on my lower lashes and we'll be done. I'm just going to quickly give you my final thoughts on this palette and then I will wrap it up because this video is probably way too long already. I have these contradicting feelings towards this palette. I like it in the sense that I like the look that turned out. I like how the shadows that I used to create this look worked and blended out well and everything was fine. However, having tried the shade Framed, I have a feeling that the shade Siren will also be very similar because they are quite similar toned eyeshadows, and also they did both swatch a bit weird and patchy as well, so I really don't know how to feel about them. Knowing that there are possibly several eyeshadows in this palette that do not work the way that they are supposed to, it just bums me out because I was so excited about the whole Vault collection. I was incredibly ecstatic of trying the shadows and seeing what looks I can come up with them. I'm just let down that this palette does not work like a dream in its entirety. But to finish on a positive note, I do really enjoy the look that came out. I think that the shadows are very unique. I don't have anything like this, any kind of color like I have on my eyelid right now in any of my other palettes. So yeah, I'm definitely very happy about that. So this was it. I hope that you enjoyed the first video of the series and that you liked the tutorial. Stay tuned for the next episode, which will be all about the Bling Boss palette. I am really excited about that one because that was one of the palettes that I was most looking forward to getting, and yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I would love to know what you guys think and how you feel about the whole situation surrounding these palettes. Are you going to buy any of the palettes? Are you going to buy the whole collection? Have you already got your palettes and are they working for you? Do you have any kind of issues with some specific palettes or some specific shades? Feel free to leave your thoughts or share your experiences, all that kind of stuff in the comment section. But yeah, that is all from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Other than that, I will see you guys in episode number 2. Bye!